Howdy y'all, this is Texas Gaming Industries here, and welcome back to my Let's Play Railway Empire. In the previous episode, we connected the cities of Atlanta and Jacksonville, thereby dominating the East Coast and the southeastern parts of the United States with my railroad network. And in this episode, we're going to try to expand our company to the Midwest, which, since the previous episode, we connected to Toledo, Ohio. Now, remember in one of my previous videos that New Orleans was looking for an investor for their meat packing plant? Well, since we're going to connect there now, might as well buy it. Because not only I will receive a profit on my transports of cattle to the city, but I'll also be able to generate some revenue as well. This will be very useful as some towns nearby could use an influx of meat deliveries. Pass by this coal mine, and then connect up to the main line here. We'll save the other two track nodes over there for later to connecting to Memphis. Place the signals in the right spots, do Control and Shift to make sure all the signals are in one-way direction, and build a maintenance facility here. And now I'll operate a transfer train between Atlanta and New Orleans. Now the thing is, since Atlanta is producing meat as well as New Orleans, I can't operate a passenger train I can't operate a freight train between the two cities. Because if both cities are producing the same type of commodity, a freight train won't work. Because what's the point of delivering meat from one city to another that already has meat being produced? So, while my Jarvis takes care of the passenger train, we'll expand our company towards Memphis. We'll add a simple two-track train station with signaling control. The best thing about the signaling control stations is, whenever it's just a two-track platform or the four-track platform, you could basically have both sets of track available for use. Well, technically, meaning that you will have these four track nodes at each end of the station, no matter if it's just a single two-platform station or a four-platform station, which really helps out a whole bunch. However, though, if you are building a station with traffic control where a station, aka a competitor, has built and is expanding into the vicinity of your station, you cannot upgrade it. So bear in mind with that. So, considering that we're about to enter the 1840s, we might as well get ready to purchase some new locomotives and rolling stock later on. Now, as a rolling stock, the thing is that some commodities in some scenarios have changed considerably since the game's release. Back in 2018, when you did the gold rush scenario on the West Coast, gold was transported in open-topped hoppers, with the texture for iron ore. Same thing for one of the scenarios in the South. Well, one of the scenarios in the South. But when the Railway Empire Australia, or well known as the Down Under, was released, gold was transported in boxcars, or four-wheel box fans. I mean, the only two American-style pieces of equipment is the covered cattle wagon, well, the stock car and the refrigeration car, as well as the tankers and the gondolas and flatbeds and hoppers. But the box cars, they look a little too European. Maybe they're basically based off of the Baltimore and Ohio smooth side roofed box cars. Who knows? Anyway, we can now connect to Nashville, Tennessee, and leave that little node right here for connecting towards the Midwest. getting back to the topic of rolling stock, if you're doing an 1830 to 1930 scenario or free mode activity, you will basically notice that the rolling stock on the passenger cars will change, but the effect will only happen once a year passes. For example, the second generation of passenger cars from the 1850 era will not appear until 1851. So you'll basically have some time to get some new locomotives for the impending arrival of the new engines. Now, oh, look at that! We made over $505,000, and we made over $1 million in last year, which is pretty freaking sweet. Now, I have 100 points. I can either spend it on the telegraph station, which will not only help my trains prevent wrecks on my railroad, but it will increase the amount of time passengers wait in cities by 10%. I could get the spark arrestor, which will improve my locomotive's reliability by 6%, or acquire a new locomotive, the Philadelphia 060 Switcher. But I want to save up for the Reindeer, the first generation of 440s, which is based off of the Pennsylvania Railroad C or D class 440s that were built when the railroad began operations in the late 1840s. We'll have a market trader, we'll basically put in the comfort so more passengers will ride the trains, and speaking of which, $120 for a passenger train ride between New Orleans and Atlanta. That is just a little too much. $108 seems much more reasonable. And I might as well connect, Atlanta to Memphis, Tennessee. This will leave the 2 track nodes at this other end, so I can expand towards the southwest, such as heading into Houston and San Antonio, Texas. Unfortunately, since Memphis has has a meat packing plant, I can't deliver freight there yet. I'll have to grow these cities enough for another industry to be in its place in order for freight to be active. We'll operate a passenger train between Memphis as well as Atlanta, categorize it as P, and add the Gyrus locomotive to operate it. Ticket price between the two, $91. Now $82. We'll expand the track into the, mountains. We'll basically branch off here, meaning that a train could travel from Atlanta, hook up to this, and connect to Nashville. But I also want to connect this line to Charlotte, so a much more direct connection between the two cities is possible. But this is going to basically cost a lot of money. Not to mention the severe grades on some sections. Plus, I want to retain many of the natural features, like these rocks, for example. Because if I build too close, they will be deleted, and they won't return unless I delete the track that's occupying that space. Unfortunately, the spot is way too small, so I'll have to basically move the supply depot to someplace else. This looks a lot more usable in this position, but it's going to cost me $791,000. And I don't have enough money left over to pay back a bond. So we'll have to let our trains make the money for us. We do have enough, however, for another innovation, the covered freight car, which will increase my freight prices by 4%. Which means I'll have more freight. My freight trains will have a small increase. Ooh, this engine is breaking down easily. And this engine's operating from Green Cattle. Might as well put a maintenance facility there. And look at that. We had just earned enough money to complete this extension. And now, we'll be able to double track it all the way to Nashville. And I only need to pay about $200, well, $200,000 for this to complete that section. Considering that, let me think. What? Oh, a section of my track is too sharp. That's just great. I'll delete it, and then basically, sometimes bridges appear at the wrong moments. Sometimes I just want to build a track straight up and not have a bridge. Anyway. Now we have Atlanta, well, Charlotte and Nashville connected by rail. And the coolest thing is, I'll build a supply tower right next to the river, so water can be supplied by the river to the locomotives. Realism! That's what I like. There we go. Place the signals in front of the tunnels because I can't put signals inside the tunnels, unlike that in Transport Fever or Transport Tycoon or something like that. I'll build past the iron mine and then connect it to the main line here. The iron mine could be useful for later, as a commodity that's basically available eventually will be the tool makers. I could have lumber produced in Memphis, which means I could connect this logging camp to Memphis, and then in turn produce lumber and brought to Atlanta. Not only the city will grow, but with the nearby coal and iron ore mines providing some raw materials, I could then deliver tools. But Charlotte is not big enough for tools yet, as the city needs to have a population of 90,000 residents and cannot be available until 1860. So there's no way I'll be able to produce tools very early on. We'll have to spark arrestor. Let me have a look. Washington to Chicago. Get this done by 1854. That will be quite easy to handle. We'll just gotta get some trains running between the new connections first. Then we'll focus on completing that task next. You know what I mean. Classify P, add the Jervis, and then add the Jervis between Nashville to Chattanooga. And then connect the two cities again and add Jervis. I'll run a now, since these two cities are very close to one another, I could just deliver a load of passengers between Memphis and Nashville. Ooh, 71,000. That's a little bad, but we'll be able to weather it off. And then operate a freight train between Memphis and Nashville. And change the starting position at Nashville instead. And then operate the Dunham on the freight train. But since Nashville needs grain, I might as well also connect the Morris Preserve, the grain farm, and deliver grain to Memphis, Nashville, and Atlanta. Because grain is a commodity that's needed in the city. We'll use the middle. We'll make this middle track the Nashville connection. Be used for the Nashville connection. It's not what I want, but it works. But I can easily replace this costly bridge with a simple crossover. All I have to do is connect these two, put a pinpoint, and place it right over there. Though I have to add some signals to prevent the train on the gray line from colliding with those on the main. And then connect this section of track to the line towards Memphis. That way, all my trains will be able to reach their destinations. And since track 1 is not being used the most, we'll put the John Bull on that. But yeah, it will basically be that. Charlotte is growing pretty nicely. We got a good amount of cargo being delivered, and now it accepts milk. Which means now I can basically deliver milk to the city. And if it's big enough, I'll eventually be able to produce dairy products, aka cheese, which then can be delivered to the local cities nearby. I technically primarily connect industries that are super close to the cities. That way, not only I'll be able to make a good buck, but it could basically allow me to produce some required commodities a lot more faster. Ooh, there's a grade, so I'll replace that with the G&M America. Mineral oil reduces maintenance requirements by 5%, which is pretty good. Now all we need is basically to acquire the reindeer, and then we'll have all the 1830 to 1850 locomotives available. Well, these two are the last engines to be acquired in the 1830 to 1850 era, so we'll need to acquire those as well. Meeting the street in Kingman, not close at all. Now that we have that section done, we can then focus on connecting to the soon-to-be railroad hub of America, Chicago, Illinois. One of the tasks requires us to deliver at least 1,253 passengers between Washington and to Chicago. Which, if I do multiple passenger trains at the same time, we might be able to complete that task. Now, passengers primarily want to go on the fastest route available. And if it's not as fast as they think it is, then they won't ride it. I mean, I would like to run a passenger train non-stop from Washington to Portland. Passenger trains are routed for the fastest way possible. Even if I add a waypoint sign onto this Y here that leads to the track that heads to Portland, no passengers will be interested in riding it. Plus, I also want to make sure that we can connect to another part of the main line eventually, and possibly even head into the Midwest from here. But anyways, we'll get started on operating a passenger train a special service between Chicago and Washington. Since we don't have a dining car yet, we'll basically just operate it as it is, put a 1, and then put the Jervis in charge. Basically, this locomotive will be pulling 8 passenger cars, but with these two, that's basically 16 little wooden railway carriages. Put a number 2, and it's slowly being loaded with passengers. We'll basically see how many passengers this first train has gotten while we take a little ride along the line. The reason why I personally like this game is just the fact that there are so many realistic locomotives, including locomotives that have been preserved. When I was visiting my sister up in Virginia, we took a trip down to the B&O Railroad Museum, and I basically wowed her and her boyfriend Ryan about the locomotives that were in the museum, including the Lafayette, which, of course, this locomotive is based on. We'll travel through Pittsburgh and connect to the line towards Chicago. Revolutionary freight locomotives, ballroom patterns, flexible axle bearing. Like shiny was. Ooh. Two news notices at the same time. I think those I think that Japan one come. I think those Japan ones basically come with the Japan DLC. I'm not so sure. But anyway, we'll see how many passengers get off when they arrive at Chicago. Might as well also build a maintenance facility to make sure the locomotive's in good condition. And the locomotive and the Moral Preserve is needing repairs. That's because there was no repair facility built in Nashville. And 80 passengers got off the train when they arrived in Chicago. Might as well operate a few more trains. Once I get this task done, I'll basically delete them so it won't cause a bottleneck in traffic. We still don't have enough for the reindeer yet, but we're almost there. Get some new staff members. And our passenger train between Memphis and Nashville is an express, which is good if I had Miss Palm. The revenue from my passengers will basically go right through the roof. The roof! Bad condition. And this locomotive is operating from green cattle. And the Parker Manor locomotive needs repairs. Ugh. Even back then, trains were very unreliable. Even back in the day, trains technically were unreliable. Because, again, it was a new technology. Might as well replace and give this engine an overhaul. And now we can finally afford our first proper express locomotive. And we made $57,000 in the previous year. The Reindeer, which is basically the Pennsylvania Railroad D or C class. This was basically not connected nearby. This was basically the general example of a 440 in America at one point. With that in charge, we could replace the Jervis of all passenger services. Now, there's a lot of cool whistles, but the one that was used by the Reindeer and some other engines sounds so bloody cool. It gives off the meaning of the wailing whistle, so to speak. And this is one of the few whistles in the game that have two types of notes. Like this. And this. Anyway, we'd have about, look at that! 367 people have traveled to Chicago from, well, Washington. But I think we could do a little better. We'll operate about 10 trains, all departing Chicago, and heading straight, well, Washington, and heading straight to Chicago. And now we can afford our newest locomotive, the Philadelphia 060. These basically will replace the John Bull in rural business operations, because they're a lot faster and can haul a heavier load. Atlantic's growing pretty nicely. And Charlotte just built up a beer factory right there. Great. So I'll have to buy it. Oh! Excellent timing. I'll have to buy it, tear it down, and then basically replace it with one of my own industries, which will be this. Now Charlotte can produce cheeses. And weaving factories could use a bit of an upgrade. I realized I haven't even connected this cotton farm to my railroad. I guess I was just so busy trying to make sure my railroad's in proper running form that I forgot to do so. Now that we got that done, we can now operate the trains between the Stewart Preserve and Charlotte, so we'll have a steady supply of cloth available to be produced. We'll operate 2 trains to make sure. Plus, the city is now big enough. I'm thinking that Charlotte could basically do well with the travel agency. As you can see, the average popularity of my lines is a lot bigger than it was previously. The travel agency will also allow passengers to basically choose where they want to go, though the building looks a little bit too big. It doesn't fit in very well. But I think I might change that with the small inn. There we go. It fits in a lot better. Unfortunately, I don't have a big city big enough anywhere to place down another one, a hotel. But I think Chicago will probably be the best place. Or, actually, a travel agency will probably do better here because Chicago is the gateway is basically the railroad's gateway to the rest of the world. Telegraph line successfully tested. We just got the patent for the telegraph and then that newspaper comes up. Crazy. Now, Washington is big enough for another industry by deleting it. There's no fruit farms nearby. We got sugar being delivered. There's a logging camp. So, I think I might put a paper mill in this city instead. I mean, it's producing clothes, so might as well produce paper as well. Some cities could really use that paper. Because again, a city will only grow if it has a good amount of commodities delivered, as well as some of the new ones it wants. For example, it wants liquor, cheese, and paper. Which I'm gonna place right here. Now, Washington has access to a paper mill, and now it will start producing paper from the logs they delivered. And I think that will basically do it for now. Although we didn't complete some of the tasks we were supposed to do in this episode, we did, however, manage to connect to the Midwest and railroad town of Chicago. And we'll eventually continue our expansion westward, hoping to basically connect to the Midwest at Oklahoma City, and begin our westward connections towards the Pacific coast. So, if you liked this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Texas Gaming Industries for upcoming videos, as well as new content coming out every Friday. Once again, this is Texas Gaming Industries, and I want to thank you for watching. Bye!